back into the country and talk about the BBI in just a bit, the youth perspective of this. We can't definitely delve into every single part of it, but I picked out a few issues here that I'd just like to hear from them. So I'll pose the question, it's a yes or no, and why? And I'll start with you, Matere. Allocation to counties to be increased to at least 35%. Yes, no, and why?
For me, I fully support the increment in the allocation to counties from 15% to 35%. That is a minimum. Basically because if you see Schedule 4 of the Constitution that you're having currently, most of the functions have actually been devolved, including health, including agriculture, and so many others. And it would only make sense that once you devolve a function, also the prerequisite resources are also followed. They rather follow that particular function that has been devolved. And that's why we fully support the increment from 15 to 35%, having in mind also that service provision at the county level is going to improve, that opportunities that are going to be created at the county level, especially, and I'm very keen on issues of agribusiness. Now that agriculture is devolved to the mashinani level, issues of agribusiness have to be at the center of the development of this particular country. We have to take advantage of that and ensure that our young people are actually, in one way or another, are tapped into the county function of agriculture so that they can be able to also play actively in terms of the generation of the income to themselves and also the promotion of the economy that you're having. Okay. Secondly, and also closely linked to that, apart from the 35%, definitely there's that 5% that is going to the ward level. Yeah. When we talk about the Ward Development Fund, and this ensures that the infrastructure, ECDs, and what have you at the ward level are going to be improved, having in mind that resources are going straight to the ward level. All right. Maliba? Allocation of to counties to be increased to 35%, yes or no, and why?
That is not a question of yes for the simple reason that we have not been able to even take care of the 15%. So I do not believe, and I hold it so because of the data that we have, that ever since devolution started, we have never met the 15% mark. We always do less. If you look at the math as we go back, it doesn't work. So if we're talking about 35%, let us talk about things that are practical. But Trevor, I would actually ask for a minute because before I went off, and every time I'm actually doing this digitally, I always have got a challenge because somehow Alex and Nathaniel ensure that my internet is not working so well so that I might not be able to be heard properly. So before I went off, Nathaniel said that I had been indoctrinated because I did not mention the deputy president, and I spoke about the hustler versus dynasty narrative, and I said that that was something that we need to actually look at. Just one line to clear that we all know that the challenge of poverty is very serious, and that the divide between the rich and poor is an issue that worries everybody. So the only person who is indoctrinated here is the person who denies reality. And to say that the deputy president should not speak about that, I also think that is also denialism, because he is not the person who even invented the word hustler. We have had that word for decades. We have been using it as young people. We are simply stoning the messenger here. We are killing the messenger. The deputy president is simply the messenger of this particular information. He's bringing a message to us, and we are not comfortable to actually probably speak about it. So I do not think the issues of indoctrination arise here. It's just us as a people being honest enough to speak about these issues. On the 35% thing, Trevor, do not ask yes or no, because it's not practical. There is no money. We are burdened. We cannot even meet the 15% threshold. Where are we going to get this extra 20%?
So is that a no from you?
Totally. Maliba. As in, whether I say no, yes, it's not practical.
So you're saying it can't be done. That's your issue there. Or is it that the 15% has not been accounted for properly, therefore the 35% should not be allocated? Should it then remain at 15%?
We do not have the capacity to even take care of 15%. We have not done. And by yesterday, by the way, you saw governors saying they want to shut counties again, that Treasury had not sent them money. Let us not be very ambitious. And I know BBI should be realistic. All of us want BBI, by the way. The only problem is that the sellers of BBI, the salesmen, the people who are going out to sell BBI are actually very, they get out of reality, and they are not basing these things on reality. They want to excite us so that we pass it. But can we do these things based on reality? Let us base these things on the data that exists. Okay. From where we are, Trevor, we cannot take 35% to the counties. It's not practical, it's not true. It is to excite the masses to pass this thing, but it's not practical. By yesterday, Treasury had to do a letter to say that they have finally sent money to counties. We always are fighting and arguing about this thing. So the story about 35 is a, let me just call it what, is a white lie, is a long tale. It's neither here nor there. It's not true, it's not practical.
Okay. Mugari?
First of all, if you look at the Constitution, that is Chapter 12 on public finance, there are certain guarantees that have been put in place in the 2010 Constitution. One of them is that not less than 15% should be allocated or appropriated to counties. So already there is a minimum threshold. So if the government has the goodwill, they can be able to allocate more than 15%. In fact, they can even allocate 50% based on the available resources. Now, the reason why, personally, I support BBI, initially, before the report was out, I was not supporting BBI because we were still having these conversations within our party. But when the report came out and the bill, we have looked at the report and the bill, and we have been able to apply our minds and say that BBI is good for the country based on the things that we have been saying and based on the amendments they made to the request we submitted. Now, I am supporting BBI fully now for the simple reasons that the resource allocation is being devolved to counties. The question of implementation is a separate question. But the question of putting guarantees in the Constitution is something that I support as a young person. Because currently, the Constitution is talking about not less than 15%. So when there is a constitutional guarantee that not less than 35% should be allocated to counties is a different debate. Somebody like me who comes from Nyamira, where we have been marginalized for many years, I will be very happy to see a constitutional guarantee on resource allocation going to my county for simple reason that we are going to have increased allocation to perform certain functions around water, around roads, around health facilities. That is something that I should be proud about. So what Arnold is talking about is a question of implementation. The reason why there is an issue on implementation of what the Constitution already guarantees is the question of a struggling economy. So we need to sort out a struggling economy and then be able to expand the cake. And that's why we are saying that we need to have a robust economic recovery plan. Once we have that recovery plan, we can be able to say that we want to improve certain sectors of the economy. For instance, there is this issue of foreign direct investments or investors who are coming from outside the country to come here, so that when they come, the investments are able to grow the economy. We cannot have investors coming to Kenya if we don't have peace and tranquility. And that is why BBI is coming with a proposal that let's have a stable political environment. Once we have a stable political environment, then we can be able to make certain investments. Okay. We can be able to attract investors. So once we have those investments made, the economy can grow. We can have massive industrial jobs. We can be able to have young people being, we tap into the creativity, the energy, and the innovations of young people to be able to grow the economy. That's where our focus should be, so that we can be able to implement the constitutional guarantees of 35%.
All right, Silantoy?
Well, for me, it's a yes and no. Yes, because just like my friend here pointed out, the county has various functions that need to be funded and funded well. And we've had, ever since devolution came up, counties have been severely underfunded. And so increasing it to 35% is a good thing. It's a bit of a challenge because, just like Arnold pointed out, already that 15% has not been a guarantee, and there have been consistent delays of Treasury releasing this funding, and therefore it continues to cripple the counties even more. So there's no particular guarantee that having 35% within the Constitution is actually going to be implemented, just like all my panelists have pointed out. The one thing that I do want to point out as well is he talked about the 15% in the Constitution is a minimum threshold, and therefore if there is political goodwill, it can be increased, and therefore we don't necessarily need a constitutional amendment for this. But however, having it as a minimum threshold within the Constitution is also great. He talked about the 5% Ward Development Fund, and I think it's a good thing in the short term, because yes, the funds such as CDF and now the Ward Development Fund, even the gender fund that goes to the women reps, it's a good thing to have funds within the disposals of people, closer to the people. because it meets a direct need immediately. However, it continues to perpetuate the handout culture because we continue to require something from our members of parliament, require something from now our MCAs, require something from our women reps. Soon enough we'll require something from our senators, and yet these people's core functions are actually to legislate so that the funding that is available is accessible to people. So I think it continues to perpetuate the handout culture as well. Yeah. And so in a short term, it can be a good thing because it will meet immediate needs, but as a long term, it continues to have us depending on these people to directly give us something. And therefore, it doesn't help with politics. It doesn't help with elections. And therefore, we will always have an issue with funding for elections because we'll always expect something from these legislators. And so it's a bit of a tough balance there. An alternative for that could be having a community administered funds, and these funds would be run by people who are already there. Structures that already exist, such as the chiefs, such as the ward administrators. Those are administrators. Members of parliament, senators, women reps, those are representatives. They are legislators. They're not supposed to deal with funding. And that is my opinion about that.
All right. Arnold, there's another issue here. Minimize taxation for new and small businesses by providing them a tax holiday or an exemption of at least 7 years as support to the youth entrepreneurship and job creation. Yes or no? Why?
Definitely yes. And for the simple reason that we have sung about these things for years. Of course, they are not constitutional, and ordinarily they should be done through policy and administrative action. But if BBI is going to actually ensure that these things we've really tried to push and speak about over the over the years are actually going to be done, then yes, because at the moment businesses by young people are actually struggling. We tried to create market for young people by coming up with the AGPO process, and then young people are dynamic. So a few young people looked for businesses and they could not get them, and then KRA came over them. So not for not paying taxes, but just around penalties. So this is a welcome process, but it did not have to wait for BBI. But if BBI is that particular occasion that ensures that this is done, then so be it. So yes.
But Arnold, if your argument earlier on for 35% to counties was that the 15% is not being utilized properly, you've just spoken about YAGPO now, the Youth Access to Government Procurement Opportunities, which is supposed to be 30% to the youth. It's not being adhered to. So why is the tax holiday any different?
If there's anything that will actually ensure that business is easier, especially for nascent businesses, for young people and anyone who's trying to their hand in politics, that should be a welcome administrative action. The only argument we've always had is that this is not a constitutional issue. There's an old person who once said that a man needs 2 reasons why he should do anything: a good reason and the real reason. So if the holiday around taxation and everything else is a reason enough for us to probably push BBI and vote for it, that is the good reason. But then there is the real reason why BBI is there, and normally we don't want to talk about that. So if we're going to talk about taxation, it's quite a complex conversation here. What happens is that as a country, we have got about 19 million people, 19.5 million people who are within a working age and therefore should be contributing towards our tax basket and our revenue basket. But actively, KRA has got only about 4.5 people actively in its tax net. What we should be talking about here, Trevor, is to widen the tax nest and not to deepen, because what happens a lot of times is that the same people who have been paying taxes are the same ones we are going around and going deeper into their pockets, and there are few other people whom we have not been brought into the tax net. So widening the tax net will take care of the problem about resources. When I speak about the 15%, when I spoke about the 15%, I meant that even though the Constitution already guarantees that counties should get 15%, for all the financial years that we've had devolution, we have never marked the 15% mark, even though it is guaranteed. And of course, the argument by people from Treasury is real and legit that they do not have that money. So if anyone is going out there and exciting us about 35%, they are not being real. Already the 15% is guaranteed in the Constitution, but we are not meeting it.
All right.
So on the tax holiday, yes, let us give young people a reprieve. Let us push this particular business. The only thing I'm chuckling at is that did it have to wait for this particular hour to actually be done? It's something
Okay.
that we should have done. Anyone that is logical, anyone that thinks about growing businesses, this should have been done.
Okay. Matere, tax holidays.
Trevor, first, I think Arnold Maliba has brightened up my morning. Him being a distinguished graduate of the Hustler Indoctrination School in Karen, accepting that for once the BBI document captures the aspirations of the young people, I think is something that makes us happy as young people of this particular country. Straight to the point that you're talking about the tax holiday and the tax exemption that you're talking about 7 years for the BBI proposal. And I think it's a welcomed idea. First, we have to realize that we have so many the tax regime that we are currently having in this country makes it almost impossible for young people to venture into business, especially at the startup level. Once you start, there are so many stringent requirements that you're supposed to meet before actually your business takes off. And that's why we presented before the BBI task force, we pushed for this, and it was adopted in the final report, that young people who are interested to venture into business would be given a 7-year tax break before they now resume paying their taxes. And the essence of this is that the realization that first, you need to have capital, you need to start your business, it needs to grow, it needs to mature, before now you can be able to cater for the taxes. When you are starting the business, definitely there are overheads. You have to pay for rent, you have to have capital to run, you have to have you have actually to set aside some resources for the daily operations of that particular business. And that's why we are saying that it's a welcome reprieve, that the young people are actually going to go into business, and they're going to have 7 years before they start paying their taxes. And closely linked to that, the beauty of this particular document also caters for the aspect of how we are going to fund the businesses that are going to be started by the young people. And that's why we have the Biashara Mashinani Fund at the local level, at the ward level, that young people across our country at their ward level, they can be able to get into their business incubation centers, where they can actually be able to get the Biashara Mashinani Fund, apply, and if it goes through, definitely they'd have capital for their business ventures. And closely linked to that is also the aspect that there would be training in issues of entrepreneurship at the business incubation centers across those wards that we are talking about, where young people can actually get training and skills on issues of business development, business management, issues of entrepreneurship, so that once they get into business, they don't go when their eyes are closed. They go with an open mind, knowing very well that these are the requirements and this is how a business is supposed to operate. And thirdly, also closely linked to that, is the aspect that county governments are actually coming in by the 5% that is going to the ward level, that our young people from that particular point, they can actually do also business with county government, that can also do business with the national government, which basically brings us to the mood of that particular document, the entire BBI document, that presupposes us moving from an extractive economic system into a productive economic system. And as Nathaniel had alluded earlier, it is about baking a bigger cake for the entire country to share in, with equity and equality being put on the table, as opposed to having a smaller cake and all of us are struggling to get a share of it. Okay. And probably, just closing up on the chapter, it's also very key to us that in as far as we are talking about the tax regime, then we must also talk about the investors who are coming in. What are some of the measures that are going to be put in place to ensure that when investors also come in, they do not have, or rather they don't meet a tax regime that is very punitive for them, so that they actually think twice of Kenya as an investment destination for them. And that's why we have even proposals that once you're coming in as an investor and you take a particular number of young people, then you're actually going to get some reprieve from the tax institutions, and we have KRA, that once you take a number of young people from the, or rather you employ or you take them for internship, then you're going to get some rebates from the government in as far as the taxes that you're supposed to pay.
Okay. Mungari?
Trevor, part of the reason why I joined ANC before I joined up any other political party is basically because of the manifesto of the party, which encaptures the issue of SMEs and tax, simplifying the tax code. Now, if you look at the all proposal in BBI on the tax holiday for young people, it is a welcome proposal. And that is part of the reason why I changed my views and started supporting BBI, because it's going to spur entrepreneurship and spur entrepreneurship and innovation from the young people. But the bigger picture should be, we should be able to look at how are we going to implement this seamlessly without having older members of the society coming in to register businesses in the names of young people and then take advantage and evade paying tax. So I'll be more focused on the implementation part, because this is an administrative proposal that has been put forward by the BBI task force, and we should be able to push that further. Okay. And over and above that, Trevor, we should look at the issue generally on simplifying the tax code in this country. Before we go to the issue of who should get a tax holiday or the other, but I support the idea, is that we should be able to simplify the tax code. Once we simplify the tax code, we should be able to expand the economy. We can never get the sufficient revenue to implement government programs, including the 35% that is supposed to go to counties, if we don't expand the economy and simplify the tax code. Okay. So once we get that right, it will get to a point where we will not even need to give young people the tax holidays. Okay. We'll have to do away with that, because the economy will be doing well. And once we have a working economy, everybody can be able to pay their fair share of the taxes. And that is why I'm putting forward the proposal that it is only an ANC government that can implement these things.
All right. Okay. I agree with that. What are your thoughts on the tax holiday?
I am aware that the tax holiday proposal was in the report that was released on 26th of October, right? But it is not in the constitutional amendment bill, is it? I don't think so. It's not.
It is in the report, BBI report.
It is in the report that was released on 26th of October.
Yes.
But it is not in the constitutional amendment bill. So if we are going for a referendum, this is not an issue that is up for discussion, because it is not in the constitutional amendment bill. And so the idea is great. It's actually not on the constitutional amendment bill for us to even say whether or not we're going to have it. And so it feels a little, I mean, it's a bit confusing. So is it going to come later? At what point does this come into play?
It's because it's not a constitutional issue, and it is put as an administrative proposal to be implemented either by legislation or as a policy proposition within government.
Okay, so once we have changed the constitution, then after that we can discuss the legislation about having a tax holiday. Is that what the proposal is?
That's not the case, because the whole intent of BBI was to propose constitutional, administrative, and policy reforms in the country. So this particular proposal on tax holiday comes in on the administrative proposal.
Okay, so which will come after the constitution has been changed,
It can be implemented on a continuous basis, because the government is there.
Okay, no, because it is not in the issue that we are discussing about the referendum. But if it was, I would say yes. Secondly, this is a good idea. It's great. However, if you give me, for example, I make furniture. For example, I'm a young person trying to do a furniture business. I make furniture. And then because I make this furniture, you give me a tax break of 7 years. Great. However, I am competing with imported goods from China that are half the cost. I can't compete in this market. I'm not able to sell my goods. So how does the tax break help me if I am not even able to compete with products that are coming in? How does this help me if my government does not protect me, does not have policies that protect local industries, local businesses against the effects of products that come from outside? My suggestion would be, yes, in addition to having a tax break, probably have more subsidies for businesses in general, and not just youth, because everybody does businesses. So more subsidies for this. For example, a service that government provides, like electricity, is one of the most expensive costs for people in production. And if I'm able to have my government shelter me in terms of this cost, and not necessarily give it to me for free, no, but just reduce the cost a little bit so that my cost of production is less, so that I'm able to compete in the market with goods that come from outside, then that would be a good proposal, because at the end of the day, I am able to make ends meet. So this is a good idea to start with, but I think it's incomplete because it doesn't mitigate other issues that youth businesses face. And in addition to that, already we have, Maliba talked about a tax net that is very little. Even me getting into this tax net already, and whoever is already in there has to dig much deeper into their pocket to be able to pay taxes. And eventually when I do pay taxes, I will pay an exorbitant amount of taxes. And so it's a good proposal to begin with. I'm not sure when it is going to come into play because it is not in the constitutional amendment bill. But yeah, it needs to have more.
Okay.
Trevor,
Yeah.
probably just I come in a bit.
Yeah.
First, I think to advise my sister, the BBI report, you need to know that it is under 3 categories. One is the constitutional amendment bill that you're talking about. 2, we have administrative proposals. And 3, we also have legislative proposals. So it doesn't mean that everything else will have to go into a referendum. We have things that will have actually be handled at the policy level, and we have others that will just be enacted by Parliament. And what you're talking about is what will be enacted by Parliament. And closely linked to your remarks is the aspect that if you read that particular document, we also have an aspect for intellectual property rights, the protection of intellectual property rights and businesses that are actually going to be started by the young people. And the government has been tasked with that particular responsibility to ensure that the protection of businesses and startups that are being pioneered by the young people across the particular country, so that they can also be able to flourish and actually go through this, the start, the growth, and the maturity stages of their particular businesses that they are concerned, or rather they are participating in. All that is part and parcel of that particular document that you're talking about. Thirdly is the aspect that one of the proposals is the establishment of a youth commission. And this particular youth commission, some of the proposals that you're talking about would be handled by the youth commission, just to align the proposals and the aspirations of the young people to the general framework and policy issues that are handled at the executive level.
All right.
Now, to give an example, Trevor,
Yeah.
just to bring the point home closer, let me pick the border sector. In this country, the border sector is raking in $1 billion, estimately $1 billion per day, because we have more than almost 1 million borders in this country. If you look at most of the people who are riding these borders are young people. So if the border sector is raking in $1 billion on average per day, in a year it is about 369 billion on average. So if these young people are able to get a tax relief, a tax holiday of some sort in this sector, then it is a huge relief. It means that the tax holiday is going to put money in the pockets of the border riders. I'm just giving this example to bring the point home why personally I am supporting this tax holiday in the meantime.
Okay.
But the bigger goal should be to expand the economy so that everybody is able to pay taxes, and then we are able to grow the country together. So that is the only way we can be able to expand the shared prosperity of this country.
All right, we're running out of time here, but I need to discuss one other thing. Now, this is the executive, the expansion of the executive, and I want you, Maliba, to come in on this. Is it a good idea to expand the executive without even going into the full detail? There's the president, deputy president, prime minister, deputies, also picking, in the legislative arm, there's also picking of the ministers from the members of parliament. Good idea or bad idea?
A bad idea. And I say it's a bad idea because, first of all, the problems we have and what BBI is trying to settle cannot, and no one has actually ably demonstrated how an expanded executive then takes care of the winner take it all and all the other challenges we have. But Trevor, because I know I might not be back again, it's just important to say that economic growth and economic development, issues around economics, are scientific processes as much as they are political. And BBI, as it were, is actually a very political process. It's actually laughable that we are looking at BBI to solve our economic problems rather than just fixing our stuff. We are looking at BBI and it's being marketed as a silver bullet. Yet, Trevor, in the 57 years that Kenya has been a republic, we have tried to change our constitution 45 times. We have succeeded 12 times. This is going to be the 13th time. So the BBI process is not necessarily new. We have had these moments in Kenya's short life, about the 57 years time we've had. So the fever pitch you see around here, the players might change now and then, but literally we have seen this. It is constitutional change and re-engineering the nation is a continuous theme in Kenya's history. And I want us to treat BBI as a normal process, not something that is so big out there. Otherwise, we are going to be so excited about it and it will under-deliver and we will be very, very angry about it. In the aftermath of doing all this and getting on, only to realize that the real BBI and the BBI that is being sold is quite worlds apart. And I've seen how Silantoi has actually come out to just ask all these things about tax holidays, the National Youth Commission, all those goodies that are now in there, did they really need this particular hour to see light of day? When will they come? Are we going to pass the constitution first of all, and then once we have changed or rather passed BBI, is it the time when then they come into effect? Or then after that we will have them to push? So I just need to remind the young people who are seated there, because I consider myself a captain of a generation and probably an elder of this generation with hindsight and then experience. I will say this, that from where we sit today, it's only fair that we approach national building differently, not the same way the things we are trying to speak against, or rather the people we are trying to speak against, have done it continuously. So probably it's time we had a candid conversation, a conversation that does not have limits.
All right. Matere, I'll come to you on this so that we wind up. And Maliba will come back to you for closing remarks unless Matere and Nathaniel disconnect your internet again.
First, I think it's important for all Kenyans to understand that the Constitution and the issues of constitutionalism, it is not cast on stone. That Constitution is basically a living document, is a moving target that has to address the issues of the common person. And even one of the most famous and well-crafted constitution, the American Constitution, if you check history, it has been amended almost 27 times. So it doesn't have any effect if we amend the Constitution, whether it would be the 13th time or the 12th time, according to Arnold Maliba. I think in as far as we have issues that we think can only be addressed if the Constitution is amended, then so be it. We have to amend it so that it can address the affairs and the aspirations of the Kenyans as we speak.
But how does expanding the executive help?
Second is the aspect of the expansion of the executive, which is basically your key question. And I think that there has always been a feeling of exclusion when it comes to the executive position, that I'm feeling that if my person is not sitting at the table, then I'm actually excluded from sharing that particular cake that is baked at the national level. And this particular exclusion has ended up even at the grassroots, demoralizing our young people and also making them feel that they are less Kenyans as opposed to other Kenyans. And that's why I really support this idea of expansion of the executive. Thirdly is the aspect that in heterogeneous communities like the ones that you're having here in Kenya, if you read political scientists, they will tell you that in heterogeneous communities, it is always advisable to have a broader base at the executive level so that people can feel that they are included in the decision making, they're included in baking the cake, and they're also, most importantly, included in sharing that particular cake. Okay. And that's why we push and we propagate and support the proposal for the inclusion of and expansion of the executive so that Kenyans can actually feel that they are living in Kenya, that they are proud to be Kenyans.
Okay, Mungare, you've actually been basing most of your arguments on the economics of it all. Is this a good idea or a bad idea?
First of all, I'm a big supporter of one man, one vote, and entrenching electoral justice at the ballot. Because most of the problems that we are facing in Kenya is the issue of electoral justice. There has been a perception that there is an electoral injustice in most of the presidential elections. And one of them was the 2017 elections, which was nullified. So part of the reason why, and I want to agree with Alex, is power is a perception game. People, communities or people or tribes or whichever groupings perceive that if one of their own is not at the top, then they don't feel represented. Personally, I've always been feeling slightly jilted about that issue, because once we have somebody at the top who is able to deliver the aspirations of many Kenyans, then we don't need to have one of your own at the top, because you are going to get service delivery irrespective of the holder of power. But because of the kind of society we are living in Kenya, we are a plural society as a country. And because of this pluralism in our society, we should be able to take care of certain perceptions in power, the arrangement of power, so that certain tribes feel that they are represented and in government and their issues are being tabled at the right forums. Okay. So personally, I'll be inclined towards us having electoral justice at the ballot. So once we sort out the issue that we have free and fair elections, especially presidential elections, then the rest of the issues will be neither here nor there. Okay. But I support the issue of bringing government back, government back to parliament. Because if you look at the BBI, they have proposed that government is going to sit in parliament. That means that there will be increased accountability on the part of government. Okay. So to that extent, I am supporting BBI to increase accountability on the part of government and also slightly expand the base, the arrangement of power in Kenya, so that certain tribes, and in fact, most of the, anybody who has a fair shot in politics can be able to get an opportunity. But over and above, because these are continuous conversation, Trevor, and constitutions are made for people. People are not made for constitution. Over time, I am a proponent of the proposal of having a system, a parliamentary system that is going to make sure that everybody, provided you belong to a political party, and you are able to fight your way up, you get a fair shot of becoming anything in this country. All right.
Silenta, very briefly on that.
Okay. First, just to say, there's nothing wrong with having an expanded executive. There's nothing wrong with having more legislators. Nothing necessarily wrong. It's just a different system, and it can work depending on who implements it. The challenge that I do have with this proposal is the BBI says it's proposing these specific proposals because they're trying to mitigate the winner-takes-all elections. They're trying to deal with inclusivity, and lastly, they're trying to look at divisive elections. Now, in my view, I don't see how having extra seats mitigates any of these three issues. Because why? Mainly because of inequitable distribution of resources. That is the issue. And so if we are not dealing with the main issue that makes us want to have our own person as president or in the executive, then we cannot deal with divisive elections. Then we cannot deal with inclusivity. Winner takes all is neither here nor there, because that's just how democracy works. One person wins, the other one loses. That's just it. And so that is my issue with the proposal, because the proposal is saying we are dealing with these three issues, but the actual recommendation does not necessarily mitigate the issues that are being presented, and that is my issue. The only thing that I wish would be done better is, especially with this whole BBI process, is I feel like there's not enough education about the actual document. I feel like there's not enough information out there for people to understand what exactly does the document say, regardless of what the president will say, regardless of what the former prime minister will say, regardless of what the deputy president will say. I feel like young people need to take more time to actually interrogate this document themselves and make these choices for themselves, regardless of what they are told is right or wrong. And look at this document as a thing on its own, in terms of not attributing it to people, and look at it to see whether is it going to benefit me as an individual, does it benefit the country in general, and avoid following or attributing or always just being sheep of a specific flock.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Maliba, closing remarks, 1 minute each.
My closing remarks are very basic. For young people to support BBI or to oppose BBI, do not look at anything that is written with the word youth in it. Those are incentives to ensure that you vote for this thing. Vote for the real BBI, look at the real issues. There is BBI, and then there's the real BBI, and then there's the BBI as is sold to us. As in BBI, the good reason, and the real the BBI, or rather the real reason why BBI is being done. Because everything that is about young people in BBI are things that are administrative. Their policy should have been done long time ago. Government has got those policies. If I had time, I would actually list all of those policies that speak to all of those proposals that are there. Some of them actually already exist. So for young people out there, look at the real BBI, the structure of governance, because you are no longer going to be young. Tomorrow you are going to actually be the people who are in charge. So vote for BBI, not because there are a few mentions of youth here and there. Those are just incentives. They really are not even meant to go so far. Look at the real BBI and vote for it.
All right, Mongare, 1 minute.
Trevor, I want to say that this is a moment where a generation of young people need to rise. We need to take up positions of leadership and take up our space so that we can be able to drive this conversation. We are a majority. We have a huge number of young people. Most of them are aspiring for a government that should work for them, for all, irrespective of who is the occupant at the top. Right. So young people who are out there, they should be able to take this opportunity of BBI, because BBI is a conveyor belt. It will never come again. Let's seize this moment and then take up leadership positions and then carry this country to the future.
All right, Matere, 1
Trevor,
minute.
in my final remarks, first, I think it's important to appreciate that Kenya has one of the highest population of the young people, now currently standing with the statistics that we've been given about 75%, which might be a curse or a blessing considering how government is going to handle it. And from where I sit, I think the BBI has provided us with a platform to ensure that we not only change our affairs, but also the affairs of the future generation, having in mind that being a young person is not a career. It's basically in transition. Today I'm a young person, tomorrow I'm not. So it's basically giving us an opportunity to take advantage of it, to ensure that the issues and aspirations that we have as young people can actually be shaped and can actually be legislated and be put in that particular constitution, so that going forward we might not have, or rather face the same challenges that we have been facing.
All right. Silantoi?
I think young people should stop thinking of themselves as a separate group in this country, but rather as the people of this country, and be more attentive to, just as Maliba says, issues that are not specifically said, this is a youth issue, because ideally everything else affects us in exactly the same way that it affects everybody else. And so I think it's time for young people to critically look at issues as issues, and not in relation to people, in relation to flock, in relation to money, but just look at it in relation to yourself and how it benefits you. I know that's a very individualistic way of looking at it. However, it's critical because it affects your life anyway, and that's what you kind of need to look at. So just, I think young people should pay more attention to issues and try their best to actually actively seek it out, so that they know what to do about it.
Great. Like I mentioned, we can't discuss the entire BBI document. It was just picking out a few issues there. We'll continue having this conversation, and hopefully you also get a chance to read and decide for yourself. Alex Madere, convener Youth for BBI, thank you so much for making time. Nathaniel Mongare, ANC Youth League. Arnold Maliba, Executive Director, Open Hub, that's OFH. And Susan Silantoi, Public Policy Expert and also former senatorial candidate for Nairobi. Asante for making time. We're taking a quick break here. On Daybreak, when we come back, Roy T-Boy is on the decks with Willis Bazoo. He's also here. See you in a bit.